Hello, and welcome to my cellar. You know, I say every time, I got some really good comments. Well, I don't do the bad ones. So, but yeah, every once in a while I get a couple that I find really intriguing. And I have a couple of those tonight. But first we're going to talk about high-level adventuring. I'm having a lot of trouble understanding people's comments on high-level play. It's not hard to do. In addition to the myriad of very powerful foes, I will throw in a competing adventuring party of like levels, as well as some vicious traps to mix it up. The high magic resistance of many of more powerful monsters nerfs many spellcaster abilities. Use your monsters and NPC effectively for high-level play, and it will remain challenging. And I completely agree 100%. I don't know how many DMs have tried to do it, but that's a good recipe right there. High level characters, really badass monsters, competition, deadlier, because hey, it's a greater reward, so it should be a deadlier acquisition. Okay, along the same lines, there's a time and a place for high level characters. Modules like the Lost Caverns of Zojanth, I think that's how it's pronounced, and the Tomb of Horrors, after all, were not made for a one-hit-died newbie. Although they can try. Yeah, they can try. See how many seconds they last. But that's a challenge for more experienced PCs who can take on hordes of monsters or demigod-like undead. Honestly, I think the problem with high levelers isn't so much how many hit points they have, or the ease of hitting their opponent, but the magic items and spells they've attained through adventuring. And that really falls on the DM when you think about it. That's right. If you have a high magic campaign, you're feeding them. You're throwing raw meat in front of the tiger. If you have a more moderate level, or if you have magic that is low level and only occasional something really potent or powerful, that's okay. You know, I've said before, I frequently use +1 and +2 weapons that are not magical. They're just especially well made or whatever, and they have pluses where they might not otherwise. If they're fighting somebody that magic doesn't work on, doesn't matter. They still get their plus. And you're right, it falls on the DM. Another one. This is on the other side of this coin. High-level play has always been the house of power gamers. They just want to break the system like hackers. It's fun for them. Okay. Then he goes on. How often did you incorporate PC backgrounds into your adventures? Was that a thing with old school D&D? Is that something new? That's new. The only history that the old school players would get might try to convince the DM, or Gary in this case, that yeah, my kid grew up on a farm that had a fish pond, so I didn't really know how to swim well. All right, once that's established, that's part of your background story. Okay, you're the good swimmer in the group. As to whether or not you were the third and neglected son of a poor country parson, etc., that was up to the PC to develop, to the player to develop his PC in such a manner. It tended in those early days that the only backstory of the PC got was the adventures that it already had on its quest to have more and even greater adventures. That was a backstory. What was its adventuring history? Where you were born in that did not figure in very much, especially in my campaigns, especially early. Doesn't matter. You want to make up a backstory? That's fine. I once had my playtest group that I playtested a bunch of the stuff that I was writing 10 years, 15 years ago, and still haven't published. Well, I self-published. Anyway, I had them, after they came up with the character, write me a one-page backstory because I wanted them to role play. But that was it. And some of them did well with it, and some of them didn't. All right, this was thanking me for answering a previous question. On a different note, what are your favorite historical areas for wargaming? I suspect the Civil War is at least one based on visual evidence. If there's one that's pre-gunpowder, muzzle loading, modern, etc. Good question. No answer. I like them all. I played Caveman, the game, once, to be honest, once. I played Space Marine, Space Race. I was a huge micro armor fanatic for many years, and then ended up donating a over 4,000 piece collection to a museum in California. I really like the concept of the command and conquer. Oh, geez, I'm going to embarrass myself. Yeah, I think that's it. The card-based system that involves 3 areas of movement, whatever. Samurai battles. I really like that period. I've played larger scale battles. This one is somewhat considerably smaller, but I like that period of play. I used to be a Panzerblitz nut, and then went into micro armor. I developed a game on the Battle of Hastings that I still am proud of. I didn't design it, but I helped develop it. And let's see. Well, my buddies and I, on our twice monthly get-together, just played Illuminati for the first time in 20, 25 years, probably. I've got a couple of Viking games I really enjoy playing, but they're generally fewer players, so I don't get as many chances to play them because most of the guys I play with all come over every other Wednesday night. I've just gotten heavily into the Age of Sail, Iron Ships, wooden ships, Iron Men thing with Warlords, Dark Seas, or Black Seas. Anyway, I painted up a buttload of ships, and I'm getting ready to play it. My tastes have always been varied. I started out on D-Day, and then my next board game was 1914, and then I kind of went crazy, and mostly simulation still, but hopped all over with SPI games and some Avalon Hills, and then found fantasy. And for fantasy games, for fun, I like Tom Wham games, especially Feudality. I really enjoy the Ticket to Ride games, and I have, I think, all but one of the expansions or extra maps. I just play a lot. I've always viewed gaming as an exercise in problem solving. The ebb and the flow of the game, the battle, and every turn you have a new problem to solve. There is an older board game, first put out by Jedco from Australia, but I believe it may have been picked up by someone here in the States later on, called Field Marshal. It was a very basic game, much like Tactics 2, in that it had airborne, it had armor, it had ground, infantry. Very, very basic in that regard. But it also had a deck of cards. One of the earliest games that I know that had this type of variable, that you pulled a card and you might have to send a division off the board because you've been ordered to send it to somewhere on the. It's an abstract, but all of a sudden you got a new problem. You're playing with a unit less, or on the other hand, occasionally you get a division comes in. Where can you put them? Where will they do the most good? I look at that as problem solving, and I really enjoy problem solving in that fashion. I don't do Sudoku. I know it ends in U. I don't do that. I do two crosswords every day in the paper. But I really enjoy problem solving. I enjoy playing gin and many card games because it's a form of how do I get out right now? What's my best strategy for ginning? Or if I'm playing pinochle, or if I'm playing mahjong. I play lots and lots of games because they challenge me to think on my feet. And every time you're playing mahjong, you start out with building a hand, and it doesn't work out, and it changes, and you're looking for your best options, and that's what I enjoy about gaming. Now, there's other social games that don't have a lot of skill, like Michigan Rummy, where you either dealt the cards or you're not. But if there's some kind of knack to it to learn, I enjoy it. Though I got bored with chess because I found war games around the same time. Okay, this one's going way back. So far back, I need a drink. This is liable to be a long video. Listen in my old videos, I'm confused about Benny Two Spells competition. As far as I understand it, the person who created Benny's Two Spells didn't have two spells in mind until someone won the competition. If he did already have two spells in mind, what were they? Also, the two spells I would have chosen were Flesh to Stone, Stone to Mud, and it wouldn't have been guaranteed to work due to saving throws, but it sounds pretty final if successful, especially after the target's mud was thrown into a river. Well, good God, that was a long time ago. I don't know if we ever did complete that competition. Of course, everybody knows that Benny only needs two, and nobody knows which two because they're always fatal. I do believe Jim, his creator, did come up with two spells, and I will have to check with him and ask him if we ever did. Yeah, that was. I didn't get much of a response. I was disappointed by the response, and it kind of fizzled out. Your videos have inspired me to go back to read my AD&D first edition books. I haven't played first edition since the late 1980s. I don't think I ever played it as described in the first edition DMG. Weapons speed factors interest me, and it is used as a tiebreaker to see what attack types go off first. However, if a dagger is used, speed factor 2, versus a two-handed sword, speed factor 10, the guy with the two-handed sword swings and misses. The dagger wielder would get multiple attacks, 2 I think, against the two-handed sword fighter. My question is, are those 2 attacks in addition to any attacks a dagger wielder would normally get? Basically, the 2 attacks from speed factor would be extra attacks? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. I can tell you how I interpret that. Number 1, if this isn't an ascending, if 2's faster than a 10, and they both rolled the same number or were going off in the same spell or the same round, phase, segment, whatever, the 2 would get the first attack. It's got the lower number. And obviously the two-handed sword's the slowest because the dagger is so much faster. It gets a second normal attack, and that's it. Then it'll get 2 more plus whatever. You get 1 attack in a round, or you can get 2 in a round. You can shoot 1 arrow in a round, or if you're really fast or got a magic bow, you can shoot 2 in a round. You don't get 2 more plus your 1. No. That's the way I would interpret it. Your mileage may vary. That's the way I would play it. You're that much faster. Again, play it how you think it makes sense. I always try to logic it out. Big, heavy, two-handed sword. If it hits you, it's going to hurt. It will hurt more than a dagger. But it's slower than a dagger. It takes longer to swing. Dagger, dash in, poke, poke. I would let the dagger dash in, poke, poke, hit twice, and still get clobbered by the two-handed sword. Because it is all happening in the same round in just one order. Now, if the 2 poke pokes knocked it down to 0, then it's up to you how your house rules deal with who's dead when. I have had 2 creatures strike each other in the same round and kill each other, and they are both dead. Why not? Well, I sit firmly in the you should retire your character at higher levels or go into delineating play. I would just point out that I believe one of the very first Cull stories has him as king already, and about intrigue and eventually having to kick some major snake man butt. While I don't think playing level 10 fighters all the time, just delving the dungeon to be super for me or my group, I do think it could be fun to pull them all out of retirement once in a while when the threat needs their level. A threat that needs their level occurs. Sorry, it's getting late. I was on another web stream for much longer than I planned before I got here to start this. Yeah, there's no like I said, we had occasions where old players got brought out for battles. I could see, like, hey, let's get the gang together. But there again, if you play by the age rules, the gang ain't what it used to be. And come on, you got to play by the age rules. If it's been 10 campaign years since that guy retired, he's got to have 10 years worth of aging applied. And if you magic him up to where he used to be, then there's got to be a chance that he's going to basically explode because he's been overstimulated, like he took too much speed. Just the way I would play it. My thinking, not written in stone, just uttered late at night. This person, the next one, agreed. Long campaigns are for starting low and gaining. One-shots are for enjoying those characters later. I agree, absolutely. One-shots are great for bringing the old boys out of retirement. I do one-shots with my big pre-gens when the adventure warrants it. With the Wheel of Blame, it's not warranted. Speaking of which, somebody asked me, all right, it comes later. I love Descending Armor Class 2, but I don't really use Thaco. Instead, I use a roll low to hit system. Still, I appreciate Thaco exactly because it doesn't fit into the modern everything higher is better mentality. Thaco is less mechanically elegant than an attack bonus versus ascending system within the context of modern games where higher is always better, but in my opinion, that's a good thing. The more unified and sane the mechanics of a system are, the less players and DMs tend to question the mechanics as written, the less inclined they are to tinker with the system, The more an RPG system resembles a hodgepodge collection of house rules, the more likely those playing it will free to make the game their own. Agreed. The more interpretation and house ruling you put in, the more you own it. Absolutely. That's it, isn't it? You own it. Higher is always better. No. Thaco is what Thaco is. Again, I've explained it many, many times. But I like the idea. I agree with the idea that it requires rolling one direction and everything, or most everything else requires going the other. I love to do that in the Wheel of Blame. Okay, give me a die roll. Roll me a 20 under 12. Next time I might go, roll me a 20 over 14. Roll me a 20 under 11. Up, down, up, down. So that if you do get a person that's rolling high, and sending out all those waves, he's got to switch channels every time. I just like mixing things up. Okay. Wait. Shouldn't this show called be The Curmudgeon in the Dungeon? And the response to it underneath, I'm guessing that Mrs. Curmudgeon might draw the line at Tim having a dungeon installed in their home. The title being literal. Well, actually, my wife has referred to my corner down here as the dungeon for many, many years. I didn't name it that because I thought it was too precious. It rhymed. Curmudgeon in the dungeon. No, didn't want that. I didn't want precious. I just wanted something unique. Okay. Replying to the last one, this video broke my heart a little. The overly offended WotC mob are misguided through their arrogance of trying to compare the past through a modern lens. These modern players will never really know the wonder and joy you early creators gave to us as children of the 70s and 80s. I almost feel sorry for them. Please know, there are those of us who think that what you, Gary, Dave, and the rest of it gave us, worlds defined by the limitless imagination, the game untapped in us. This bioessentialism nonsense and histrionic Twitter offense is just a noise in the void by an annoying loud minority. All WotC did was slap an IP name they purchased onto a generically boring system designed for the lowest common denominator. They'll never capture the true spirit of the hobby. Personally, want to thank you for being such an important part and shaping my imagination and critical thinking skills. You're welcome. And you couldn't say anything to make me happier if something we did helped you become a better critical thinking. Because God knows we are lacking in critical thinkers today. Yeah, it's funny. This is what I was also talking about on the other stream I did earlier. I don't know if they're going to record it or whatever and make it available later or not. I don't know. I went and I clicked on the chat and they said, oh, here's a link. Come talk. So I did. It was me and Ed Greenwood and the two guys that do it. And I forgot their names already. But you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I love hearing tales of how D&D has helped people in hidden ways. Okay, in regard to rolling perception checks, given the relative natures of the player's talents versus their character's talents, especially considering the major 6 stats and various special, especially wisdom and intelligence, this is a very important area of accounting for what the players would do, regardless of what the player's decision for their characters are. Doesn't that perplex you much? Okay, and then if it does, okay. I don't do passive perception checks. I do a form of it. If it's a group that I've played with before, or one of my more ornate adventures where they have to get down to watches, who's going to be sleeping for how long, etc., because it's a long overnight adventure. we might only be playing 4 or 5 hours at a con, but then I know all the pre-gen skills and abilities and ratings, and if something occurs during that watch, for instance, I will roll to see if that person on watch perceives it and go from there. But I don't let people wander down the hall and say, oh, by the way, your spidey sense went off and there's a funny panel over here. And that's bullcrap. Don't do that. Tim doesn't play that way. You got to ask questions. Again, going back to that longer group, I will, marching order. Who's in front? Who's checking for traps? Who's listening? You know, I make people commit their characters to who's doing what. Then I know what they can do. You have done it in your home campaigns through a process of elimination and attrition. If you're playing the way we originally used to play, where the whole game is dependent upon obtaining knowledge, which will then let you succeed in your goals, you got to ask questions. And unless they're inane questions, and you can determine for yourself whatever that means, you're not gonna be doing anything except what a perceptive player should be doing. If you got a DM that doesn't like you asking questions, well, that's a problem. If you have a player that keeps beating on the same topic again and again and again, question after question, that's a problem. How you deal with it is all dependent upon the dynamics of your group and the personalities involved. That can be a real problem. By the same token, wisdom and intelligence are wonderful things to use to prevent metagaming. What's your intelligence again? 12? I don't think you figured that one out. No, I don't think he's, no, What was it you were trying to lift? What's your strength? No, you didn't lift it. Stats can be used like that to keep the players within the yellow, within the yellow lines, within the white lines, whatever color the lines are where you live. And now to be fair, if players do something that's dumb that they should have been wiser, I let them. I don't go. But again, to be fair, when a party comes to a crux, and they okay, we're gonna do, they mutter a bit and they go, and I think they might, maybe, either I'm not sure exactly what they're planning, or they may want to rethink what they're planning. My key buzzword is, all right, I'm a little confused. Tell me again exactly what it is you plan to do. And more often than not, they'll rethink it and come up with something better. But not always. How do I join a Wheel of Blame game? Well, they aren't open to individuals. You get 3 to 6 of your friends together. You pony up $75 between you. You find a time, you get in touch with me. PM me on Facebook, that's fine. Comment me on here. You PM me, we set up a time. I send you the pre-gens. We get together, we play. But I set up for groups of 4 to 7. All right, here we go. I have a question about, let's say, stereotyping of fighters and clerics. I posit that fighters would have their own religious and magical rights and abilities, especially when dealing with healing. Well, you're allowing fighters to have magic, inherent magic? Then what are wizards if fighters can have magic? Fighters might bedeck themselves with +1 amulets and +1 rings and stuff. My opinion. Especially when dealing with healing. No. If you're a follower of... if I were the DM and somebody came in with a well-reasoned, I'm a follower of this martial arts or this discipline, and we train as, okay, you might heal a little faster because of your training techniques. And if the other players get upset, well, they can spend some time out of game, and you can train them, and then they can do it too. And then you've lost your special ability. If you don't want to train them for free, charge them. The class restrictions that prevent fighters from praying or spellcasting for healing are reductive and unlikely. I'm not saying fighters should be able to cast spells per se, but I posit that fighters in a magical world would develop a culture that includes patron gods and goddesses. Okay. If you have a patron god or goddess, and you perform the right ritual, burn the right incense over your head before you go into a fight, before you go into if this is your morning prayer or whatever, then you can give yourself a +1 bless. +1 to all your die rolls. +1 in your favor on all your die rolls. But anything more than that diminishes magic. Magic is a wild, uncontrolled, barely understood force that unleashes tremendous powers. In my world, in Mikanda was sundered by a magical mistake so egregious that it caused the planet to have earthquakes and continents to part, and new continents to form, and islands to submerge, and that's all the backstory in my world. And that's how magic came to be and how it became. Anyway, if you want to play it that way, go right ahead. I'm happy for you. I don't. I think I need distinctions. It's not that you can't give them some pluses if that's what you want to do. And how many pluses you allow them to stack is up to you. I don't like the 2 rings only rule, but I do have a rule that if you're going to wear more than 2 rings, some rings are not going to be compatible with other rings. Maybe not even on the same, not even on the same person, let alone the same hand. And he goes on to say that maybe just a quick and dirty form of magical healing that staunches wounds, gives a few hit points back, and enhanced first aid, if you will. Okay. If you, however you play, if you go train in something like that, if you go spend money to learn it in something like that, that's up to your DM. Okay. That's the way your world works. Okay. Now, the same individual goes on about clerics. On clerics, I don't see why clerics are so stringently defined. Yes, it creates a difference from fighters. Yes, that was the main idea. Both Gary and Dave agreed on that. Distinguishes from wizards, which is fine, but I kind of hanker for more nuance in religious fetishes and prohibitions, or armor or weapon types. Why not a sword fetish? A sword-obsessed deity, or a fire-obsessed deity? Well, if that's what you want, put it in. The traditional cleric was based on traditional bullshit of the Middle Ages about clerics don't shed blood. While supposedly bashing a guy's skull inside his metal helmet with a mace so you didn't see all the blood running down his neck and into his carapace. That adhered to it, I guess. Mongol dynasties did not shed blood of other Mongol royalty. So they wrapped them in a blanket, and they had 200 horses gallop back and forth across the blanket, trampling them to death, but none of their blood touched the ground. Which of these did we choose? We choose, okay, just like magic and iron don't get along, because that was a very prevalent theme in lots of Appendix N. And we chose that clerics don't shed blood, but they do this. I don't play that they cast spells. I play that they perform short prayer rituals. Definition, nuance, whatever. I don't get into deities, and I don't get into schisms and reformists, and don't go there. I'm not real comfortable there to begin with. The higher level gaming can be, I believe this was meant as an insult. Higher level gaming can be exciting. That is rewarding enough, and players like it, unless they got a bad DM. Even kings, lords, and nobles can adventure. To say otherwise tells me you have an agenda to win an argument, and truth means nothing to you. I must admit, a little puzzlement here. I believe somebody's chosen to hear what they want to hear, and if you want your kings to go out adventuring, go right ahead. Why? I mean, come on, man. You're the king. You say spit, and people pucker up. Why would you want to go out and die from an infection in your toenail from a thorn that didn't get pulled out soon enough and you got septic? You're the king, man. Now, why a wizard wants to go out, become more powerful, all right. If a cleric wants to go out and do more good for his church, spread his faith farther, smite a few more unbelievers, okay. No, a king? No. Maybe a duke. Maybe an earl. But a king? Come on, man. Mel Brooks said it best. It's good to be the king. Here we have two conflicting opinions. Wizards of the Coast is living on borrowed time. So many real gamers outside of Twitter and Reddit are fed up with its treatment of identity, politics, and D&D. Valid point, there are many people fed up with it. But, in counterpoint, the next person points out, well, 5e is still the biggest tabletop seller. Their sales have been boosted by the pandemic and have had strong increases year on year lately. WotC are not in the top 5 Kickstarters, though. Some of the tabletop RPGs in the top 5 are getting incredible money. I guess. I don't follow Kickstarter. I did many years ago and found it a rabbit hole I didn't need to go down. I have enough people and friends that are gamers that if they see something really neat on Kickstarter they think I might be interested in, I get tips like that, but I don't follow Kickstarter. Now, here's another slightly contrasting opinion. WotC, Wizards of the Coast, does kind of treat D&D like the old March of Progress posters. Well, except 4E, they'll hardly even admit that existed. With original D&D being a bunch of stupid monkeys banging sticks together. And now, of course, 5e is civil, rational, and intellectual and perfect. There's no reason, says WotC, to play a previous version, because 5e is the latest and therefore best WotC and the internet discourse spaces have fostered a genuine dislike and, in some cases, outright hate of early editions of D&D. Why, once I got called a racist, misogynist, homophobe just for quoting Gygax. It's probably something he said about dice. But because I even knew something he had once said, I must be evil. But the point is, newer players are brought into the game, and one of the first things they're taught is that liking older versions of D is bad thought. And there's no greater sin than bad thought in places like Twitter or Facebook. Yeah. Again, the stream I was on earlier tonight, we talked about the only reason I went there is they were talking about some beating up I'd gotten recently on a post about us old guys, we must be racist and misogynist and all these things. And I made the point that if you really believe that, after going and looking at my homepage on Facebook and seeing my half-black family, then ignorance prevails. And so the next respondent, yeah, I mean, Twitter and Facebook, come on. Save your good stuff for the Curmudgeon channel. Leave these trolls to their orcs. Okay, now. This is going to be an irregular feature in an homage to a man that I greatly admired named Annie Rooney, who used to be on 60 Minutes and used to do these great little rant whinges at the end. I don't even remember what they were called exactly. But I'm going to call mine Color Me Confused. Because certainly with all the crap that's been going on and all the accusations thrown against us and how orcs are really people too and that, the one that blew my mind, that made me just go, woo, demons are simply misunderstood. Well, yes, you could say on the one hand, the very word demon does not mean what it used to mean. Demon was just the shade of someone who had passed. They were not necessarily evil or bad. Then the Romans picked up on, and roughly the same concept. But then apparently the Catholic Church got a hold of them, and demons were bad, and they came from hell and whatever. So the whole thing has changed. How they got to be where they are today and from what they started as, certainly misunderstood. But I cannot countenance, I cannot embrace a game where, upon encountering a demon, I'm, for number one, going to believe, if he can thought meld me, I'm not going to believe that he just wants to sit down and make nice and have tea. Sorry. My mindset and my world set, that ain't going to happen. Demons are simply misunderstood. Oh. Now, for the last 1800 millennia, your job has been turning the spit on people that are being held over an open flame for having been, let's think of some silly sin. But you just misunderstood. I don't know where WotC's trying to go with this. I don't really care. I think that I ought to, but I just can't because it seems so ludicrous and absurd and crazy. I'm confused. How do you take the chance that your demon isn't confused and he just can't wait to jab a barbed pitchfork up your keister? and twirl you over that fire with it. Okay, now, Gamehole Con, going to be there. Going to be at the independent publisher's booth. I'm going to spend some time at the booth. On Friday, I'll be there between 5 and 6. Saturday, I'll be there between 11 and noon and 5 and 6 again. So if anybody's got anything they want signed or whatever, fine. That's the time. I'm bringing a few old hardbound adventures that I wrote for Eldritch. I have a few lying around. I have a few. I have one, Gygax one, that has all the signatures of everybody that was on the masthead. I have one of those left I'll be selling. And I have a whole bunch. I'll probably only bring 10 or 12. Number 2s, Gygax 2, because there aren't any left. I had all the old stock except whatever Jim might have or Jason might have. There are no more sets. Anyway, these are number 2, and they had the crappy butcher job on the article about samurai battles. Now, Mud Puppy Games, and go Google them and look for the site Samurai Battles. It's Mud Puppy Comics. mudpuppycomics.com.games or /game/product review /product/review Samurai Battles. Anyway, it's the whole article's there in its entirety, and you can reread the whole article the way it was written and see all the pieces that got lopped out. And on the copies that I'm going to be bringing up, I'm going to be sticking a sticker with that information on it in there and then signing it. So they'll be unique. Let's see. Yes, the Independent Publishers Union. Who are they? Mud Puppy Games, Skeeter Green Productions, Planet X Games, Northwest Adventures, and I think there might be 1 or 2 more, but I'm not sure if they're going to meet their commitment and be there, so I don't want to get anybody's shorts in a twist. And then I'm going to end on a very positive note. I'm going to do a book review. I told you I was reading this book, The First Fable by K.R. Burgoyne. I'm going to give you the highest praise that a DM that's been DMing since 1974 can give you. It's got 3 or 4 really, really great ideas that I'm going to lift at the first opportunity. And the rest of the book is just marvelous. You really ought to give it a go. The First Fable. Really good book. I'm doing one more Curmudgeon on the regular schedule. Then I won't be doing one the Friday that I'm at Gamehole. Let's see, that'll be the Friday the 24th, because we're leaving on the Wednesday the 22nd to go up. And on the way up, and possibly some on the way back, we're going to be doing, we being Jim Wampler and I, we once did one, Curmudgeon's going to GaryCon. We're going to do a Curmudgeon's going to, and possibly coming back from Gamehole. So we'll do a live back and forth, which we seem to do very well together. We'll be doing one of those and posting it upon our return. Probably not with the music in the front and the ads in the back or anything. And by the way, the ads in the back are all coming out. And in fact, I'm going to let my guy know to just excise them right now. And I'm going to revamp, and I'm looking for some new sponsors. They can leave in the guys that wrote, he can leave in the guys that wrote the music, but the rest of them, goodbye. Yeah, I better check on that, make sure. But anyway, that's all I got for now. I know this is a long-winded one. Hope to see you at Gamehole Con. Dodata Gobi.
Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. PSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree,
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.